As a church planter, you've got a ton to do. I mean, you're raising funds, building a team, looking for a location, you're crafting your vision and values. You are the chief graphic designer, website builder, social media marketer, furniture assembler, deal finder, email sender. You're writing sermons. You are the janitor, the babysitter, the light bulb screwer inner. In other words, if it's got to get done as a church planter, you're the one doing it. So let me ask you a question. What do you do when all the weight of planting a church gets so heavy, you feel like you're about to crumble underneath it all? What do you do when it's just too much? Well, my friend, let me tell you something. I have been there many times, and today I want to give you a plan that will help you overcome the weight of loneliness, overwhelm, and confusion that church planting can throw on you. But first, let me tell you about another free gift I have for you that will help you level up your fundraising efforts and hopefully take away a little bit of the overwhelm that raising money can bring. It's my fundraising guide that features the top 5 things that we did to raise over $345,000 in startup funds alone. And I'm telling you, if you take these tips seriously, it could help you raise tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you're watching on YouTube, just click the link in the description. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can visit churchplantjourney.com/fundraise. All right. About 2 months before we launched local church, I was in a large closet having a nice, ugly cry that was brought on by the sheer amount of pressure that I was feeling because my to-do list was way longer than the time I had to get it all done. You ever experienced that before? At that time, we were knee deep in renovations on the space that we had just acquired. 90% of our building was covered in dust and echoing with nonstop sounds of saws and shop vacs and hammering. I could have been a million other places, but I had to be here, fielding questions and making sure everything stayed on track. And after about 2 straight weeks of this, I finally hit a breaking point. It was nearly impossible to make phone calls, to think, or to get anything done when all I could breathe was construction dust, and all I could hear was power tools, and all I could do was answer a constant stream of questions about carpentry and electrical and plumbing. And if that wasn't enough, we were also installing all the tech. So the lights and the sounds and the screen and the sounds. Yeah, we're installing the sounds. We're installing the lights, the sound, the screen right in the middle of all the chaos. So there was like 2 huge projects going on, and I was like the general contractor for both. And it was a lot. And then on top of all of that, I was wrestling with the anxiety of writing checks with numbers bigger than my annual salary. People warn you that raising funds is hard. No one tells you how hard it is to actually spend them. So with all that going on, I just hit my limit. I was breaking both on the inside and the outside. I knew that either I needed to have a really good cry and let it all out, or all those emotions were just going to keep festering. And if that happened, well, they'd start to leak out in how I spoke to my family and to my team. So I just did the only thing I needed to do. I found one room in the building that I was pretty sure no one else was in, and it was the kids' supply closet. And I stood in there by a cabinet and I just let the tears flow. I had a nice, ugly cry, and it was great, except about 30 seconds into this sobbing, I heard one of the contractors coming around the corner. And of course, I panicked. And I looked around. It's a big closet. It's really more like a room, but because it's got a sink in there and stuff too. But I looked around, and I just found this random instruction sheet for how to assemble I don't know, it was IKEA crib or something. And I just pretended to be reading it so that when this guy turned the corner, he wouldn't see me sobbing in the closet. Now, it wasn't my finest moment, but honestly, looking back, it's kind of hilarious now. And truthfully, I've had plenty of those moments throughout our entire church planning journey. And let me just tell you one thing that I've done every single time I've felt the crushing weight of church planting just get too heavy to carry. It's simple, but it's powerful. When the weight gets too much, I call a spotter. When the weight gets too heavy, I call a spotter. If you've ever worked out, I've never really done this before, so you probably know more than I do, but I know this about working out. If you've ever done this, you know what I mean, right? Like a spotter stands by you while you're lifting weights and they're ready to step in if the weight starts to fall or to help you like put it back on the rack when your strength runs out, right? Or you can think of it like boxing. If you're just getting destroyed in a round, when the bell rings, you don't go sit alone in the corner, right? You've got a team there to help you regroup. It's kind of like NASCAR too. When you pull into the pit, you don't just hop out and now like you're in charge of changing the tires and doing whatever they do in the NASCAR pit, right? There's a crew there that's waiting for you. They're ready to get you back to 100% so that you can get back in the race. So I think the best advice that I can give you when you're feeling beat up by church planting is really to lean on your people, to lean on your spotters, on your corner crew, on your pit team. I think the best advice I could give is to tell you not to be afraid to let others in on how you're really doing, because we all need people in our corner, especially church planters. And honestly, if you don't have them, I'd caution you not even to take another step in this journey until you find them, because you need people in your life that you can be brutally honest with about how you're feeling and what you're walking through. Did you know even Jesus did this? Right, you remember that? Even he had moments where the weight just felt like too much. And then you want to know what he did? He turned to his people, right? He turned to them, and you and I should do that too. Now, I think that there are at least 3 specific kinds of people that you need in your life as a church planter, that I need in my life as a church planter. And it's maybe 4 actually, but it depends kind of on the season of life that we're in. So I think you need 1, a cheerleader, 2, a coach, and 3, a challenger. You need a cheerleader, a coach, and a challenger. And then when things get especially tough, you might also need a counselor. So cheerleader, coach, challenger, and counselor. Let's break some of those things down. Now, sometimes one person can actually wear one more than one hat, right? They can be both a cheerleader and a coach to you, or a cheerleader and a counselor to you, whatever. But I found that it's best to have different people for each role that you can. Right. So let's break it all down. We'll start with the one that we all need the most when we're running on empty. I think it's the cheerleader. All of us need a cheerleader in our life, right? Your cheerleader is the person or the people who are simply there to cheer you on, right? They're the ones that you go to when you need to hear, I am so proud of you. Or when you need to hear, wow, like what you're doing is incredible. I don't know how anybody could do that. You got so much on your plate and you're balancing it so well, right? Or they're the ones that you go to and they're just like, wow, God has really gifted you. It's amazing what you're doing. Those are your cheerleaders, right? Maybe somebody's already coming to mind for you. It could be your mom. It could be your sister. It could be anybody, right? It might be a parent, a friend, or a spouse. For me, my cheerleaders are my wife and my pastor. Those are my 2 cheerleaders. Now, here's the thing. This is important. They don't know that they're my cheerleaders, right? Like I didn't interview them or hand them a job description one day. That would be kind of weird, right? They're just naturally encouraging people. So when I find myself needing a boost, and you are going to find yourself in that place if you haven't already, when I find myself needing a boost, I call my pastor, and he just always naturally lifts me up without even trying, because that's just who he is. And I'm incredibly fortunate to have my wife in this role too, because she knows me better than anyone. Like she knows how I'm wired. She knows what I need most when I'm really feeling overwhelmed. And on the day that I broke down in the kids' supply closet, she could sense that something was off. I didn't even have to tell her. She knew what I needed wasn't like more solutions. She knew that I didn't need like a lesson on time management or organizing a to-do list. Like she knew I didn't need any of that. She knew what I really needed was just a little bit of space and a little bit of silence. So you know what she did? Well, again, without me even asking, she took me to lunch at a really quiet restaurant, and she just said a few encouraging things to me. And those things really meant a lot. But what meant even more was just the fact that she understood me. Like she knew me. She understood like how I operated and what I was feeling. And that's kind of like the best kind of cheerleader, when they know you so well that they know the words you need to hear, or they might not even know, or they might even know that you don't need to hear any words. You just need some time. You just need some space. You just need to get your mind off of whatever it is you're thinking about or whatever it is that's overwhelming you in that moment. And my wife does this so well. So I'm so fortunate there. So think about the encouragers in your life, the ones that you already know who fill up your tank whenever it's running low. You don't have to officially label them, give them a badge. You are my cheerleader, right? You already know who they are. All you need to do is you need to call them. Whenever the weight feels heavy, they're your spotters, right? They're the ones who can encourage you. You don't even have to ask. They're probably just going to do it naturally. So the first person or kind of people that you need in your life are cheerleaders. The second is you need a coach. We all need coaches, right? And unlike your cheerleader, your coach needs to know that they're your coach, right? They need to know that that's what they're doing, because their job is to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. And they want to help you get there as effectively and efficiently as possible. And that kind of progress doesn't really happen by accident. It requires intentionality. It requires clarity and commitment from both of you, from you and your coach. And the truth is, most people either aren't equipped or don't have the capacity to play this role in your life, as long as they're going to do it well. And that's why great coaching often comes at a cost. And in my experience, though, it's absolutely worth it. I've had many coaches over the years. Now, your coach isn't there to be your buddy. And that's really important to know. They're not there to be your friend. They're not even really there to be your cheerleader. They're there to help you get results. They're supposed to push you and challenge you and help you grow. They see what you can't see, because we all have blind spots. They break overwhelming problems into clear next steps. They simplify things that seem really complex to us, because they have kind of like a high level view of it all, and they can see things from a perspective that we can't. And when the weight of everything feels like too much, they're the voice that says, all right, here's the first thing that you need to do. Right? They're the voice that's like, I know you've got a million things on your mind. This is what you have to do next. Like, this is going to move the needle further, faster. Right? So when we were first creating our church budget, I remember staring at the numbers, big old spreadsheet, and thinking, there is no way that we're going to be able to raise this much money. Right? I was so overwhelmed by just the sheer amount of money it would take just to get started, let alone like sustain ourselves from that point on. Like at that point, we hadn't even started fundraising yet. So the gap between where we were in that moment and where we felt God was leading us to looked just completely impossible. Like, we had $0 and we needed to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'd never done that before. And I just thought, this is undoable. There's no way this is going to happen. So what I did was I jumped on a Zoom call with our board and our board members. And I shared how anxious I was, because I just have an amazing board. I have people on board that are so great, so kind, so loving, so understanding, so passionate, so empathetic. And Edie is on our board, and I specifically asked her to join our board because of her wisdom and her coaching mindset. And so I really was grateful to get on that call and just express how discouraged I was and really how worried I was, and then to get their wisdom, especially Edie's. So I listened as she began to help me break things down into simpler, bite-sized pieces. And she said something in that conversation that I'll never forget. She said to me, it sounds like you just need to create a version of the budget that feels doable to you. It sounds like you just need, the next thing you need to do before you do anything else is just build out like a worst case scenario. Not because we're going to use it, not because the board needs it from you, not because we feel like we need a backup plan, but because you need it. You need it for your own peace of mind. And I remember, like, after that board meeting, just feeling like a weight was lifted off my shoulders, because she was exactly right. That's exactly what I needed to do. That's just kind of how I'm wired. This is kind of what my temperament is like. And she knows me so well that she knew, like, this is going to help you. Right? I'm not asking for this. She didn't need it, but she knew that I needed to do that. She knew I needed to have a budget that I could look at and say, okay, that's at least achievable. And honestly, once I built that version out, my anxiety lifted, and I never even looked at it again. I still have it. I've never even looked at it again. I just needed to know that it was there. And that's great coaching. right? A person who can give you the next step that you didn't even know you needed to take. So do yourself a favor, get a great coach, someone who helps you move forward, even when it feels like everything's standing in your way. So you need a cheerleader, you need a coach, and then you need a challenger in your life. Here's why. So much of your role as a church planter is spent challenging other people, right? You're challenging your team to believe for the impossible, to believe that God really can create something from nothing. You're challenging your team to think bigger, to pray harder, to trust God more deeply, to give more sacrificially of their time and of their talent and of their treasure, right? So that the kingdom of God can be advanced. There's so much challenging going on in church planting as a church planter. That's what leadership is, right? That's what we do. But if you're always pouring out, if you're always pouring challenges out to others and never receiving them yourself, you're going to run dry. That's how that works, right? You need someone in your life who challenges you, specifically who challenges you to trust more, to trust God more, right? To risk more, to rest more, to obey God even when it doesn't make sense. You need someone who doesn't care if it makes you uncomfortable, someone who isn't concerned about keeping the peace, but who is deeply concerned about calling you up into the kind of leader God is forming you to be. This is like the opposite of your cheerleader, right? Now, this can sound a lot like a coach, but here's the difference. A coach will help you figure out how to do like what you've set out to do. A challenger really reminds you why you're doing it in the first place. Like your coach will ask, what's the plan? And your challenger will ask, are you still trusting God? Like these are the kinds of people, they're usually older, more seasoned, and they've got a whole lot of faith. I mean, they've seen enough in life at this point to not be easily impressed or to not be easily alarmed. Like they're like a non-anxious presence in your life who isn't afraid to just tell it like it is, even when it stings. I'll never forget one conversation that I had a few weeks before our church launched. A pastor friend of mine called me to express his concern because at that point, we only had 12 people on our launch team. And the conventional wisdom is that you shouldn't launch a church without at least 25 people. And I think that's good advice. So my pastor friend wasn't wrong to call me and be concerned. I mean, I was concerned too. But I couldn't shake this like sense from God telling us like we need to launch anyway. Even though our team is super small, even though we're not quite where we should be in terms of a team, I just couldn't shake this feeling that God was saying, I want you to go anyway. But I really respected my pastor friend who called me, and I didn't want to just ignore his concerns. So, you know what I did is I called my challenger. I called Eric because in that moment, I didn't really need a cheerleader to tell me, oh, you can do anything you set your mind to, you're so great and you're so talented. Like I didn't need a cheerleader at that moment. And I didn't really need a coach to echo the advice to delay because a good coach at that point would have probably been like, yeah, you're not quite ready. You're going to need to like push your launch date until you build up that team because that would be good coaching in that moment. But I didn't really need that. I knew that already. I needed somebody who would remind me that obedience to God matters more than the statistics, right? Because the statistics tell you you need 25 because if you have 25 launch team members, then you'll probably have 3 or 4 times that for your launch day. And then whatever your launch day is minus 50%. And then, you're going to have more success if you launch with bigger, whatever. So I know what the statistics were, but I didn't need somebody to remind me all that. I needed somebody else, right? And Eric did exactly what I needed him to do as my challenger. He listened to me and then he didn't give me any advice or anything. He just simply said, if God is telling you to delay, then delay. But if he's telling you to launch, then you better launch. And he was just so direct about it. If he's telling you to delay, then delay. If he's telling you to launch, then launch, right? It's so straightforward. And then he goes on, he's like, because if that's what God is saying, then who the heck cares about what the statistics say? That's kind of like his energy. And I was so grateful for that. That's exactly what I needed to hear. It cut through all my anxiety and it brought me back to faith. So just to finish that story, we launched We launched with 12 people, and I wouldn't give many other people that advice unless God is telling you to go for it. But for us, I'm really glad that we did, because God totally made it work in a way that only he could. So that was awesome. But he used my challenger, Eric, to give me the boost that I needed to be obedient to him in those moments. Now, finally, in addition to a cheerleader and a coach and a challenger, I think all of us need at least one person who fits each of those categories. But in addition to those, there are going to be seasons in your life where you'll need a counselor. You're going to need like a trained, trusted guide to help you process things like pain, to unpack the pressure that you're feeling, and really just to help you get emotionally healthy. And by the way, I think it's really important to note this. Getting help from a counselor is not weakness. You know that, right? It's not weak to get help from a counselor or a therapist. It's wisdom. It's wisdom to get help. Look, just being a human is emotionally taxing enough, right? Add church planting to that, and it is a recipe for complete, total emotional and psychological chaos. So don't ignore your inner life in pursuit of your outer calling. Don't do that. Don't ignore everything that's going on in the inside, all the tough things that you might be feeling on the inside, just because you are focused or hyper-focused on fulfilling this calling that you have. It's okay. It's okay to pause for a minute, to talk to someone who can help you get and stay mentally and emotionally healthy. So you need a coach, you need a cheerleader, you need a challenger, and sometimes you're going to need a counselor. And there you have it. When things get overwhelming, and they will, trust me, you need some specialists in your corner, in your pit crew, right? To spot you. You need that cheerleader to lift you up and to speak life into you. You need a coach to help you gain clarity and to help you know what your next right step is. You need a challenger to call you up higher and remind you that every challenge is just another chance to trust God more deeply. And then sometimes you're going to need a counselor to help you process your emotions, because there's going to be a lot of them during this whole church plant journey. So let me ask you, which of these roles, cheerleader, coach, challenger, or counselor, do you need most in your corner right now? And what's one step that you could take this week to move toward finding them? Which of these roles do you need most in your corner right now? Cheerleader, a coach, a challenger, or a counselor? And what's one step that you could take this week, maybe even today, to move toward finding them? If you're watching on YouTube, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment, answer that question, and let me know. If you're listening to the podcast, just shoot me a message on Instagram. Love to hear from you there. And hey, if fundraising is on your horizon right now, don't forget to grab my free fundraising guide at churchplantjourney.com/fundraise, or again, click the link in the description if you're watching on YouTube. And remember, no matter how impossible things feel, no matter how heavy the weight gets, you've got this. You've got this. You want to know how I know? Because you've got God. Literally, you've got the Holy Spirit of God living in you. And that means there is nothing that God can't do through you. So I want you to know I love you. I'm cheering you on. And I will see you real soon in another episode of the Church Plant Journey Show.